Welcome everyone to Swinburne's Alumni Impact Interviews. I'm Louise McCarthy, Director of Alumni and Operations, and I'm delighted you could join us for the final in the series. To begin today, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, the traditional owners of the land where Swinburne's Hawthorn campus is located in Melbourne. I'd also like to acknowledge the Bunurong people, the traditional custodians of the land where I'm located. I pay my respects to all elders, past, present and emerging, and hope that the path towards reconciliation will continue to be shared and embraced. Today is the final session in the series of our Alumni Impact Interviews, showcasing Swinburne alumni who are pivoting through this pandemic and still making an impact. Their stories are an inspiration to all of us, and today's interview will be no exception. And joining us to moderate today's interview is another Swinburne alum himself, Andrew Ford. Andrew Ford started his career straight out of high school into his grandparents' company as a jack of all trades. Now, after a decade of leading digital marketing strategies for some of the world's largest companies, Andrew has turned his attention to discovering how people could best use social media and digital technologies to lead more fulfilling lives. Having founded Social Star in 2009, Andrew now helps amplify businesses, leaders, and entrepreneurs through personal branding using those same strategies. Andrew has completed several business degrees, including a Master of Entrepreneurship at Swinburne, where he now also shares his knowledge as a digital marketing, professional development, and brand management lecturer. In today's final session of the series, Andrew interviews Swinburne alum Wesa Chau, CEO, Cultural Intelligence. Wesa Chau is an influential entrepreneur and social innovator who is motivated by improving equality within the local community. Wesa has held several senior managerial and governance positions, has served on the Ministerial Council for Women's Equality, is currently CEO of Cultural Intelligence, and is an advisory group member of the National Foundation of Australia-China Relations. Wesa is a proven leader in the organisation of community groups and recently initiated the project Resilience Against Racism in response to the blatant racist outbreaks towards people of Asian appearance during COVID-19. Wesa is currently undertaking her PhD at Swinburne with a focus on understanding what political skills are and how people develop them. Wesa also holds a Master in Business Management, a graduate diploma in law, and bachelor degrees in both engineering and commerce, with respective majors in software engineering and marketing. Over to you, Andrew.
Welcome, Wesa. It's a pleasure to speak to you today. And I wanted to start with asking a little bit about this year because it's been a challenging one. So what's 2020 been like for you so far?
It's been a really interesting journey, roller coaster, I would say. So because of COVID, I had a lot of businesses that had to cancel. Because I do a lot of training, I do a lot of speaking, but many of them had to cancel because of that. And then started thinking about, well, what else can I do? And one thing that I saw was racism towards Asian Australians. And so because of that, I started Resilience Against Racism.
Wow. I'm going to talk a lot more about that because that's a really interesting project. And I think it's also a really important project because obviously, this has come up because of the COVID situation and some people are blaming people of Asian appearance for that. So, I think it's important work. But I wanted to actually talk to you about some other of the business you're doing now. So tell me a bit more about what you're currently working on. So tell me about the business structures. I know you do quite a lot of things, and I just want for the audience to understand all the different things that you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, so I'm CEO of Cultural Intelligence, and my business actually focuses on cultural diversity and helping people understand the power of cultural diversity. And I guess I'm really driven by balancing power structures.
Sounds interesting. I like that. Tell me more.
So what I mean by that is really trying to ensure minorities have equal representation, especially when it comes to decision making. And so decision making being structures of organizations, of politics, businesses, not-for-profit, and making sure that the voices of minorities, whether we're talking about culture, gender, disability, age, can really reach their potentials. And be accepted and be included in that decision-making process.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And obviously during this time it's been impacted, and we want to sort of get into how you've reacted to that and so forth. But if I look at your profile, I want to go back right to the start if we can, if you don't mind, because I'm always fascinated with where people came from. And I noticed that you're a Swinburne student, not just once, but a few times. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I first started doing a course at Swinburne, a graduate certificate in quality management.
Yeah.
And I was doing that because I was working in a not-for-profit organisation at the time and needing to understand a little bit more about quality control when it comes to service delivery. And so the course was basically to support me in that work. And then after I finished that, I had the opportunity to actually finish off the masters, so I can get credit to a couple more to my masters. And so I thought, well, that sounds good, because I'm already halfway there. And so I finished off the masters in business management.
Nice. And so how did you come to Swinburne? Like, because you were studying before, so how did you make that transition? Why did you choose Swinburne? How was it for you?
It was actually because Swinburne is the only university that offer a QM course, a quality management course. And so I either had to pick a university, which is Swinburne, or doing a certificate in certificate 4 at a TAFE. So I thought, I think it's better to do something more substantial at a university than to do a certificate 4 at a TAFE, which would have been very practical and useful as well. But I just thought from a long-term career perspective, it's better to choose Swinburne for that.
Yeah, you like the brand. You thought it was going to be better on the resume.
Exactly.
And then you didn't finish there. You've continued on, I believe.
Yeah, doing a PhD in something completely different, in political skills, in politics. I've always been interested in politics, and I actually didn't really start my PhD in politics. It was more in leadership. So when I first started, it was through the Swinburne Leadership Institute, and of course that's not there anymore. But then it was because of that I started looking a little bit more about leadership from a political perspective, and then kind of fell into looking at political skills.
Wow. You're a study master, it seems, because you've done some other degrees as well.
Yeah. I love studying. And if you have a look at my all the courses that I do is very, very different. So my first degrees was in engineering and commerce.
Wow. Engineering and commerce. Fantastic.
Yep. So I did software engineering and commerce at Melbourne, and then did a graduate diploma in law at Monash.
It's amazing, just going between different areas. You've got a curious mind, it seems.
Very, yeah. And I actually really enjoy doing that, and I think it helps me with politics as well, understanding all different sectors, where they're coming from, what perspective they look at things from, and yeah, so I think it really helped.
Yeah. So let me take you back to where you were before when you first started studying. And so what was the first job out of university? What did you do after you did commerce law? Did you work in that sector? And then, because you obviously went through a few changes, but tell me about where you started.
Yeah, so I started as a consultant in a consulting firm, looking primarily in healthcare. It didn't last very long though.
Because you wanted to study more, or?
A little bit of that, yes. So I did start doing my law graduate diploma because of that, around that time. But I was actually more interested in doing things in relation to the community. I think that was something that I was really drawn to, because back then I started the Australian Federation of International Students. And so I'm already very involved in the community, have done a lot of advocacy work, and really wanted, like, my heart is actually drawn there. Yeah. And so after that I worked in not-for-profit.
Can you tell me a bit more about the course you started? Can you tell me a bit more flavour about what you were doing then?
Yeah, so in not-for-profit I was working primarily in the multicultural sector. So I was working for an organisation called Action on Disability within Ethnic Communities. And that was basically service delivery to people with disability from different cultural backgrounds, understanding their needs, and also how to, you know, create support services to them that they would be comfortable using, but also within the framework of the support services and policies that we have. So that really fascinated me, working in that sector, and really opened my eyes up to diversity. And understand, it was actually through understanding disability that really helped me shape my views around diversity. What it truly means. So, because I think a lot of people think of diversity as being, how does it benefit me, especially, you know, if you're from a minority background. But it's actually much more than that. It's really about how you actually treat people that are different from you. So it has to start from ourselves.
Yeah, I love it. And you started your business in 2012, and if people do look in your LinkedIn profile, and I highly recommend you do, it's a fascinating read of all the journeys and twists and turns you've taken. But so you started 2012, and so you run things concurrently, it seems. You run lots of things at one time rather than one job to the next to the next. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, so after I finished up at my last full-time job, which was at a not-for-profit organisation, I wanted to do things that are different. So I started my business, and wanting to do a couple of things: speaking, training, consulting, you know, and working on boards as well. So having a board portfolio to give me that diversity. And I think, you know, sometimes looking back at myself, I'm like, you know, usually it's people who are in their 60s, finish up their career, wanting to have that flexibility. That's when people start to have a portfolio career. But I actually started quite young, which is quite interesting.
Well, and an observation about that is that, I mean, you do lots of things at once, and you've continued to study, so you've got education and work experience at the same time. So but you've also got a very strong and niche and well qualified point of view. And I think that to sit on boards, you do need to have that. And for the people out there, you know, the alumni that are thinking about having a portfolio career, which means instead of one job, you have several different things that you do, I think you're a great role model in that. Wow, because, you know, you sit on boards, you speak, you have your own business, you consult, you're in the media. There's so many things that you do that are all brand related. But it only comes from the point that you actually have something to say, and it's a consistent topic that you've developed over the years. And you said that it came from your heart, and I just wonder where that all originated from. Why is diversity such a big topic for you?
I think it's, well, first of all, being a minority myself. But having said that, when I first started, I never actually thought of myself as being a minority. I just thought I was just the same as everybody else. Until like I said, I started working with people with disability and see the differences and layers of how we can do things differently. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to change everything, but it does mean that we have to adapt. And I'm just thinking about even from a political perspective, you know, when structures are created, it's created by a certain group of people. And, you know, in Australia, obviously it's Anglo-white men, mostly back in the days, and it worked well for them at the time because, you know, that's the group of people that were there that needed the structures. But then obviously Australia have changed. Diversity have come from, like, people from different cultural backgrounds. You've got more women. Obviously, women got the vote since then as well, and then Indigenous people. So structures needs to change to suit the people. And I think we are at a point where society has changed, but the structures haven't. So I think, you know, from my perspective, what really interested me was how do we change those structures so that it actually relates to and be more relevant to the current people.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. So it's been a year of twists and turns, and everybody knows that. You know, 2020 has been challenging. What's been the most challenging part for you personally?
The most challenging part is not knowing what's next, I think. Because because, having a portfolio career, it means that usually you might have 10% of one thing, and then you might have 30% of something else. But then with COVID, you don't know when certain things will actually come back, especially when it comes to speaking, when it comes to training, because a lot of my training were face to face, and online is just not quite the same. But I think what changed I suppose what changed me was I started to realize that I think I prefer to create projects more than I do when it comes to training.
Interesting. Because I was going to ask you, what are the benefits for you? And it sounds like a lot of people, it's the self-realization, the self-discovery through this period of what I really want to do. If you can't do those things, so you're more of a creator, it seems.
Yes, yeah, I'm definitely a creator at heart. And I think if I think back as to, some of the projects I really, really enjoyed doing. So one of the projects I helped the Guide Dogs Victoria in 1 year to help them connect to the Asian Australian communities in the Year of the Dog. So in the Chinese calendar and many other Asian cultures actually observe that as well. So there's the Year of the Dog. So during that whole year, help them connect to the Asian Australian communities.
That's a great idea. Did you come up with that idea? That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was actually through me and another friend. We were just talking about it, and we're like, hang on, it's the Year of the Dog next year. Let's try and approach them and see if they're interested. So that was a really fun project because of that. And yeah, definitely, prefer doing something like that.
And I love it. I love those, because it's such a positive, creative way to talk about diversity rather than you should be doing this. I love that. I hope you do more of those sort of ideas.
Yeah, and I would love to do more. Like this energizes me to think about. Well, what other festivals can we make use of to help businesses connect to certain communities, and you want to do it in such a way that is genuine as well. Because I think some people just want to think, okay, well, we want to target this community because of money, but obviously people don't like that. You need to build that relationship first. And it takes at least a year or two to start building those relationships, and hopefully that can continue as well. But those projects are really fun. Like I get really energized by it.
Yeah, it sounds like you have enough energy anyway. I see you, lots of things that you've been doing. So in terms of the ideas and how you've changed during COVID, tell me a bit more about the new things that you want to do in the future. Tell me about how you're going to do speaking differently, how you're going to do things in once it's more over and we get back to a new normal.
Yeah, and I think I've also been doing a lot of self-reflection as well, to think a little bit more about topics that I wanted to talk about. I think also COVID has actually brought to surface a lot of racism, and it's really interesting because I know racism is a term that some people get really upset or triggered by and say no, I'm not racist, and so I can understand that, but at the same time I think it also, during this time, it also really highlighted that we really need to work on an issue like that. So previously I was like, I prefer to talk about cultural diversity because it's a softer way to address certain issues without really raising the word racism. But I think COVID have actually brought to surface a lot of the issues, and now I'm like, I think I just need to use the word.
Yeah, well, sometimes you just got to call it, I guess, and this is probably where your Resilience Against Racism project comes into it. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, so the project is really basically it's me and another friend sitting together and think, well, this is happening within the community. What else can we do about it? And she's a workplace psychologist. And we're like, there's a lot of petitions happening. There's a lot of stories, collections happening. There's a lot of surveys, research happening. But what else can we do? Like there needs to be something more tangible for people. And yeah, so the project is really about supporting people who have experienced racism or witnesses of racism. So to support those people to move through some of the emotions, understand what happened so that they can be stronger next time, and also find ways to potentially even speak up against the perpetrators next time. Because it takes a lot. Like, I mean, even thinking back in my own experiences, sometimes you freeze because you just don't know what to do. But then if you build the skills up to be able to speak up, then more people would be willing to do that. And I've also met a lot of people who've observed racism but didn't know what to do. They wanted to help, they wanted to jump in, but then it's like, oh, would I make the situation worse? Or would I actually help the person? So it's this question of, well, should I jump in, should I not? But then at the same time, they're probably going to be the best support to the person who's experienced it at the time.
And is this what your training and workshops focus on when you're doing those?
Yes. So basically, we want to provide people with the skills to be able to, or the tools to be able to speak up, to support themselves, support other people, because I think that's a good way to build a strong community.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you need awareness, and then you need the tools in the education to actually do something about it. And I know from my perspective, I think that'd be really valuable. How do we do those? Are you doing them online at the moment, and will you move back to face-to-face? And can companies hire you for that? What's the format?
Yeah, so at the moment it's online. So resilienceagainstracism.org.au is the place to visit and book. I do want to go into organisations and start actually offering some of that to people. Especially to the people that want to be allies. Because I think that's, if we can energize more people to support others when they observe anything, that's when we start to see a lot more change. And the most interesting thing is, I mean, it was the last week, the week before. So I was doing a Senate inquiry. This just quite new. I was doing a Senate inquiry hearing. And I was basically asked by the senator to unconditionally condemn the Chinese Communist Party. Now, this is a question that he only asked Chinese Australians and nobody else. So there were other people who were at the hearing, but he decided to just ask the three of us. And this is kind of the issues that we've been having as well. So if you've got any Chinese Australians who speak up in public, your loyalty would be questioned. And it was that experience was really interesting, because after that there were a lot of support for me and two other Chinese Australians, and those support is really important. And really thankful for those support, because you've got good people around you. So I think from that perspective, it's more of a high profile incident for that particular one. But I think if people are experiencing things on a day-to-day basis, they would be needing that as well.
Yeah, I love the fact that you can do the training and go into organisations and educate them. I mean, you're still running cultural intelligence as well. So tell me a bit more about how that's going to look in the new normal.
I think I would be transforming some of my products, like doing my products a bit differently to focus a little bit more on projects as opposed to training. Even though training is still fun. And important, but at the same time, I think the projects are the ones that would really change. And there was a recent article also that says that diversity really should go beyond training now. It really should be people should really be thinking about how to measure diversity, create programs that actually have impact, like creating mentorship programs as opposed to just doing training. So doing more of that, and also because last year I did a research looking at Asian Australian leadership, and what we found was Asian Australians are more natural at interpreting data. And recently, the World Economic Forum have just released a report to suggest that data analysis is going to be a key skill in 2025. So I'm like, well, I think boardrooms need more of that. So when we think about diversity, it's not just about representation. It's also about having people with different skill sets or different natural skills into those boardrooms so that they can make decisions differently.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that, the board representation. So, I mean, you're sitting on several boards in paid positions, which is what a lot of people want to do in their portfolio career, and so young. So how did that happen for you? Where did you start with that? Because that's a quite an amazing achievement just by itself.
Yeah, well, I started my first... I started at Australian Federation of International Students, but that was more like a committee as opposed to a board with a budget to manage and staff to manage. My first opportunity to sit on board, I think I was 24 at the time.
Wow.
I was actually invited because they needed a young person.
So you're representing young, were you?
Yeah, pretty much. So I didn't know, I mean, obviously, you know, when you get invited, you just join because it sounds fun. And because of that experience, I started to learn a lot about what you do on a board and really enjoy it. You get to kind of observe all the dynamics within the boardroom, how to influence other people, if there are certain things that you want to create within the organization, you know, how do you bring other people on board so that they can support you. So you learn a lot of politics in there, and that's why I'm interested in political skills.
Interesting.
Yeah. How do you do that? So I've been on many not-for-profit boards first, and then build my skills through that, and then started looking for paid boards.
Yeah. And so was it difficult to get the first paid board position? Was it different for you?
Yeah, very much so, because it's different. People are looking for different things, and the networks are also different. So people who are on a not-for-profit board are not the same people who are on a paid board. And it takes a bit of networking skills to actually get on a paid board.
Yeah. And do you find the diversity is the same on a paid board compared to a not-for-profit board?
I wouldn't say that. I think on not-for-profit boards there are more women. Paid boards, it varies. Yeah.
So there still needs a bit of work to do on diversity on paid boards then, it seems.
Yeah. I think people in the not-for-profit sector, because it's not paid, people would be like, okay, well, you know, we need the diversity, and we need to make sure you've got your young people, and then you've got your older people, and a mix of everybody. And I think not-for-profit gets it better because they're the people who are closest to the community. They're the ones who service the community. And so they tend to understand the value of that diversity a little bit more. But then when it comes to paid board as well, we need the skills.
Skills-based. Yeah.
Skills-based. But then obviously, you know, people don't really measure skills well enough to actually say they're actually skills-based. Because if you don't have diversity, it just means that, you know, you look at certain skills as opposed to all skills.
Yeah, I love it. Now, I did hear recently that you've won an award, and I wanted to congratulate you for that. Tell me more about the 40 Under 40 Most Influential Asian Australian Award.
Yeah, I just received that award from the Asian Australian Leadership Summit. So I'm very excited about that, to have won that award. So I'm the category winner in the education area. For a lot of my work in, I guess, working with Asian Australians, but also international students.
Yeah, I mean, you've had a powerhouse career already, and you've obviously got a lot more to go. So it's an amazing career so far, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do over the next few years. So one final question. So imagine that you're speaking to some alumni, and someone asks you for one final piece of advice about how to thrive through COVID. What would that be?
Play and experiment.
Oh, I love that. Tell me more.
Yeah, so play in the sense that, at a time when you don't know what to do, the best thing you can really do is to find things to do that lights you up, that is fun. So it could be craft, it could be doing yoga at home, like anything. Just find different things to play with, experiment with, and then new things will come.
I love
because
that.
because it is through discussions with friends and thinking through all the things in a creative way in order to come up with resilience against racism.
Yeah.
So it's actually experimenting, playing, chatting to people, and then using my creative side.
I love it, because as cultural intelligence was, kind of forced to be put on hold with the speaking and the consulting in some way, you've, out of the birth of that, you've got this brand new business, and it's been fantastic, and it's still helping the same people. So it's you should be congratulated on that, and obviously you're winning the awards to prove it. So thank you so much for spending the time and sharing that amazing journey. I'd love if people could talk to you some more. So would you be available to jump onto the Swinburne alumni group and have a chat to people afterwards?
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent.
I really enjoy it.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate your time. And now I'd like to hand back to Louise McCarthy for some closing remarks on this incredible series.
Thanks, Andrew. And a huge thanks to you too, Wesa, for sharing your story. I'm so impressed by everything you've achieved in your diverse career to date, and I'm sure our audience is too. If you do have any questions for Wesa, please join us on the Swinburne Alumni LinkedIn group with the address coming up on the screen now. You will also have received a link to this group in the email we sent this afternoon. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all 4 speakers in our series. Tristan Sternson, CEO, ARC Group. Jen Sharp, Founder and Managing Director, ThinkHQ. John de Lamotte, CEO and Co-Founder, Compass Education. And of course, today's Wesa Chau, CEO, Cultural Intelligence. A big thank you to our fabulous moderator, Andrew Ford, Founder and Managing Director of Social Star. And to everyone watching. I hope you all enjoyed our series of alumni impact interviews and that it's given you inspiration and motivation in this very challenging of times. You can rewatch any of the past interviews, including Wesa's today, by going to commons.swinburne.edu.au and searching Pivoting in a Pandemic. Stay tuned for more alumni impact stories in 2021. Meantime, stay safe and stay connected.